Hey everyone, I'm here today with Alina Ng. You can say hi if you want. Yeah,
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be interviewing her and we'll get right into it. So first of all, could you just give a brief introduction into your background and what you do?
Okay, so I am originally from Malaysia. I
Hmm.
went to school in England, in Cambridge, and then went back to Malaysia, then came to the US uh, for school, law school in California at Stanford, and then went back to Malaysia for 2 more years, and then came back to the US for a faculty position. So I'm a tenured faculty member at Mississippi College Law School, and I focus on intellectual property. And I also teach a course, a basic property course in domestic relations, which is family law. But my main focus, because of my dissertation in copyright law, is in intellectual property, and that's where I do the bulk of my work, and that's where I do my research and scholarship, and that's the field that I'm in.
Okay. So I saw a lot of what you do revolves around social entrepreneurship and helping businesses and entrepreneurs. So could you go more into that and your corporation and that?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that I've come to realize through research is that when it comes to social innovation and social change, traditionally, conventionally, we tend to rely on the government or nonprofit organizations to lead that change, to create that impact. But with bureaucracy and sometimes with nonprofit organizations, there are limitations to what they can do and the impact that they can make.
Mhm.
Um, and so, more recently, I would say, like maybe in the past, it started with, maybe way back in the 50s with Bill Mayoski and his idea of the social entrepreneur as the entrepreneur who works in society and creates that social change, or has that social innovation through businesses, so rather than depend on the government or the state and nonprofit organizations to create that impact, there was this slow um, but obvious shift in thinking about the corporation as an entity that can make that impact. So, fast forward a couple of decades, 3 decades till this point, we see more and more organizations, holding themselves out as organizations that are socially conscious. Patagonia is one such company, right? So they're in the business of making apparels, but at the same time, they hold themselves out as a company that is committed and dedicated to preserving and protecting the environment, and so you see more and more companies that are emerging that hold themselves out to be a social enterprise. So the social entrepreneur is the person who's directing the change, but the social enterprise is the organization. So more and more social enterprises emerging to deal with pressing social issues. So my organization, we work on developing programs and initiatives to help social entrepreneurs identify their social mission, and build businesses and an enterprise that is profitable so that they can support their social mission through their business practices.
Yeah, so one question I wanted to ask you, what is like an example of maybe the favorite business or entrepreneur that you've worked with?
Um, so I'm a great fan of the rainforest, and because I grew up in a tropical country, so the rainforest is an integral part of the culture that I grew up in. And my one of my favorite entrepreneur is Danny Blue, who is the founder of 1 Million Acres. And what he does is he tries to build up the indigenous people in Ecuador by, teaching them to use their their skills to to make bracelets, so bracelets that are created from the indigenous parts of Ecuador, tree barks and strings that are that are harvested from what's natural to the community, and making them into bracelets that he then sells.
Hmm.
So those bracelets go towards, every sale of a single bracelet goes towards supporting his cause, and his social mission is to protect the rainforest. So for every one bracelet that he sells, money goes towards preserving 1 acre of the rainforest in the Amazon.
Hmm.
So the goal of his company is 1 million acres, and his mission is to protect 1 million acres through his business.
Yeah, I actually know a similar company that does something that's almost the same, but for the
Mhm.
beaches. It's called For Ocean, and I
Yeah,
clean up pollution at the beach.
yeah. And we definitely need more organizations and companies like that. Um, so that when we as consumers buy their product, not only are we consuming, but we're also contributing, putting back into the environment, or into the
Mhm.
um, uh, back into the world.
Yeah, especially with the environmental conditions of today, we need that.
Yeah, yeah.
So, the next thing I have for you, it's about the profit you're talking about. So, a lot of people have a negative view of social entrepreneurships, of starting a social enterprise, because their profit doesn't really compare to that of a tech company. How would you propose that people get into this? And do you think that's true, that these enterprises can't be profitable?
No, so I think that's not true at all.
Hmm.
So, the way to make a social enterprise be really successful is to operate as a real business, meaning you have a really good business plan, you have a way of making profits, and you have to be really careful about your expenses, and you need to make sure that your income exceeds your cost, operational cost. So you do need to function as a thriving, successful business before you can be successful as a social
Yeah.
enterprise. So it's not as if, people think in reverse, like, I'm going to start off with a social enterprise and then figure out how to make profits. You should start off as a business, and have profits as your primary motive, but through your business practice create that social impact.
Hmm.
So, for example, Patagonia is a great company where they sell great products, so people buy their apparels, and people are drawn to their apparels, and they want to support their business because of the social mission. So they don't start off as, I want to be um, an environmental based company, and then kind of figure out how they're going to make the profit. You know what I mean? You start off by having a thriving, sustainable business, and then I'm not saying that you have your social mission as secondary. You have to kind of merge both of them and align both your social mission and your profit motive, but it has to be aligned. You know what I mean? It one doesn't, the profit motive doesn't, squash the social mission, and the social mission shouldn't um, trivialize the motivation to make profits.
Hmm. Yeah, so I'm assuming you would support more like a business doesn't necessarily have the social impact in their business plan while they're growing, but once they have profit, they like implement corporate social responsibility or donate to environmental needs.
Yeah, and I would say that I'm not against that, but that's not what I'm proposing. So what I'm proposing is that you need to know what your social mission is right from the start. So
Hmm.
it cannot come as a forethought. It cannot be I'm going to make profits first and then figure out my social impact. Because then you open yourself up to greenwashing, and pretending to be a social enterprise when you're really not.
Yeah.
The social mission has to be a core part of the company's DNA. It has to be,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? But what I'm saying is the desire right? And the plan to make profits is not isolated from the social mission.
Hmm.
It has to be congruent together.
Yeah.
So one example would be the way that we are going to make profits is to sell apparels. But
Hmm.
in that process, we are going to make sure that there is going to be minimal carbon footprint. We are going to harm the environment as little as possible. We are going to make sure that the material that we are going to make the apparel with, is responsibly and sustainably sourced, right? Stuff like that. And so the mission to protect the environment is completely consistent and aligned with the mission to make profits.
Hmm. Okay, yeah, that makes sense, definitely. So, one question I had was, how do you propose that social entrepreneurs grow their business? Because I was actually interviewing another entrepreneur a few weeks ago, and he was telling me about how he couldn't really go down the ordinary path of going to a VC and getting an investment because they really focus on tech companies. So, How do you propose that a social entrepreneur go about growing their business?
Yeah. So that's not entirely true. There are VCs that specifically focus on companies that are making a social impact.
Hmm.
Offhand, I'm trying to remember the company, but I was in touch with them before, and they're based out in San Francisco, and their mission is really to support social entrepreneurs. So one of the companies that they fund, or one of the projects that they actually funded, was Elon Musk's SpaceX program. So it wasn't really tech. It was people who actually want to make a social impact,
Yeah.
and that was just one example. They funded other companies that were, trying to create green energy, for environmental sustainability and all that. So it's not completely true to say that VCs only want to fund tech companies. So
Hmm.
if you do look, there are VCs out there that do fund social entrepreneurs.
Okay. Yeah, it's just about finding your own way. So
Yeah,
we gotta research it out.
yeah.
Hmm.
And coming up with a business plan and a management team that's going to propel your company forward, that's aware of the social mission. You know what I mean? So the social mission, as I say, it hasn't mustn't come as a secondary thing. It mustn't be we're going to make profits and then, oh, by the way, let's think about our social impact. It has to be we're going to make social impact together with what we're doing to make profits. So that's
Yes.
the first thing.
Hmm.
The second thing about being sustainable financially is is to have a really good business plan. You know, to know exactly what kind of product or services you're going to offer the market, and then from there, make sure that in the process of offering that product or service, your your business practices is completely um, in support of your social mission.
Hmm. Yeah, so now because there are some aspiring social entrepreneurs watching this, I want to get into more of what type of attitude and what you need to be successful in that field. So just to start, what professional and personal skills do you think are needed to be a social entrepreneur?
Um, so I think the professional skills that is needed to be a successful social entrepreneur is not going to be very different from what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur generally, right?
Hmm.
You need to be motivated. You need to be able to um, look at um, things that don't work out, right? Not as failures, but as lessons, right? You need to be good financial manager, right? You need to be able to manage people and manage a team well. You need to be able to lead. You need to be able to understand the market. So those skills that is important to a social entrepreneur are going to be the same professional and technical skills that I think would apply to any person who considers themselves an entrepreneur. So that's the
Hmm.
first thing. But I do really believe that what sets a social entrepreneur aside from a entrepreneur is the soft skills, right? Or you mentioned the personal skills. So
Hmm.
there has to be an interest in the well-being of society.
Yeah.
There has to be um, an altruistic um, desire and a commitment to make the world a better place, right? So and 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 the ability to connect that social mission with um, the entrepreneurial journey, right? So it's not like all I want to do is create something that I can later on sell to, Microsoft for $3 million, right?
Mhm.
That's not the um, mindset that a social entrepreneur should have, right? So the social entrepreneur, the one that the one thing that's going to set the social entrepreneur aside from a regular entrepreneur is that, I want to create a business, but my ultimate aim is to make the world better through my business.
Yeah. And nowadays, that's a mindset that everyone almost needs because of the position societies and just because of the ultimate, I feel like, way people view the business field as corrupt. I feel like people really have to put that off by showing them the good that business can do.
Exactly
Hmm.
right, exactly right. So we need to encourage enterprises to change the way society thinks about them, right? but but the interesting thing is a lot of companies that have gone bankrupt over this really difficult last 6 months or so, um, the ones that have still continued to thrive are the social entrepreneurs or the social enterprises, right? And the reason is because people connect with, with wanting to make the world a better place, right? With wanting to innovate so that we as a society collectively can progress, right? So those companies that have actually continued to be successful and continued to thrive throughout this period are your social enterprises.
Yeah. And I feel like that's a trend that'll stick because even right now, the youth that I'm seeing today, everyone is so involved in the environment and the well-being society that they don't mind spending extra money to a
Yeah.
bit for a business that supports like the world, this like the population.
Yeah,
So I feel like that's a growing trend that we're going to see throughout the next decade, few decades.
I agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. So next thing I wanted to ask was, I know there's also a lot of people asking us who want to be in a position similar to you, where they're helping businesses grow and not necessarily starting the business themselves. So what advice do you think, like what skills you need to take into be in a position like that?
Um, so I think you need to um, have a basic understanding of how businesses work and how you can help businesses thrive and be sustainable.
Hmm.
But if you're talking specifically about helping social entrepreneurs and social enterprises, I think you really need to know the metrics or the measurements in which you can measure social impact. You know what
Hmm.
I mean?
Yeah.
And a really good place to start is the UN's Sustainable Development Goals,
Mhm.
right? Where the UN actually lays out 17 goals that say that tell you, by 2030, these are the benchmark, right? We want to see zero hunger. We want to see, less waste. We want to see, and if you can somehow teach people how to attain those metrics, or
Mhm.
something that is similar to those metrics,
Yeah.
and at the same time be successful and sustainable as a business. I think
Yeah. I
that's
actually
good.
that's a really good point because I've never thought about that because so many people can go out and say that, oh, I want to change this, this, and that and make this impact. But unless you put an actual goal to it, actual tangible goal to it, nothing's ever gonna
That's so true. That's
happen.
absolutely right.
Hmm. So one of my last questions for you, I was really interested in this actually. How do you think your experience in law helped you with your profession right now?
Yeah. So what I think what I've come to realize with law is that the law and the government cannot solve everything. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And and there are problems that, you know regardless of how you structure the law and regardless of how government tries to step in to correct the market, or make things more efficient, um, there sometimes it just doesn't work.
Hmm.
And the biggest change or the most effective change comes from people, you know, people like you who are, trying to educate the younger generation about what's possible, right? People with ideas who look at something and say, okay, that's where we can make a difference, you know. So one great example that I love is gravity light, where they managed to generate gravity for poorer communities in the world who do not have electricity by putting a weight on the pulley system so that it pulls and works with gravity to then create electricity, right? So that light was given to a lot of poor communities around the world so that they can have some electricity, but then sold it's actually sold on Amazon for $70 per gravity light. So
Hmm.
that's what I mean by aligning your social mission with your business practice, right? So with the money that they make, the profits that they make selling their product, it goes towards developing a better product and you know um, giving communities around the world that do not have access to electricity access.
Yeah. And going back to what you said about the government and law not being able to fix everything, I feel like that goes straight back to what we were previously talking about how business has such a bad reputation because of these large corporations that people are blinded to the fact that business can be such a big force of good in the world.
Yeah, I did want to react to the comment that that you made um, about people having a bad impression of businesses,
Hmm.
and it could be that through law, we're taught that businesses need to maximize their profits, right?
Hmm.
So there's a difference between making profits and maximizing your profits, because maximizing your profits means minimizing cost at all
Yeah.
cost, right? And when you minimize cost at all costs, sometimes that means releasing waste into the river at the back of the factory, right? Or releasing emissions into the air. um, and so we may need to stop thinking of the role of businesses as in maximizing profits.
Hmm.
You can make profits, you should make profits, right, to sustain your business. But the goal should not be maximization of profits, and it should
Yeah.
not be increasing shareholder wealth,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Maybe
exactly. Because when you say you're going to maximize profits, almost like the greed factor kicks in, and
yeah,
you don't care what the repercussions of your decisions will be. You just care that it'll benefit you.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So the final question I have for you, I kind of just want to open it up to you. If you have any last advice for anyone wanting to become a social entrepreneur or get into the field of social entrepreneurship.
um for anyone who wants to be a social entrepreneur, I think the most important thing is to know where you want to make an impact.
Hmm.
How do you want to make an impact? Find out your cause, right? And see how you can build a business that supports that cause. So just to give you another great example, so I live in Mississippi, and half an hour, maybe 45 minutes from where I live, there's a company that actually makes bath products, bath bombs and soaps and candles and all that, kind of like the things that you would see in a spa, right?
Yeah.
And they are reasonably priced, but they're beautiful, and people might just buy it just because they're beautiful. But
Hmm.
their mission is to employ marginalized women, women that have been in jail, women that have suffered domestic violence, women who cannot find a job, to give them jobs in the factory to help them, kind of get back on their feet. It's so in that situation, you see again a social mission, right? We want to support marginalized women, but there is a business that allows them to do that.
Yeah. So it's just about knowing what you want to change.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
So
committing to it.
yeah, that was the last question I had for you. So I just wanted to thank you again for coming on and talking.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure.
Mhm.